We're gonna start with our 2.5 inch squares. We're gonna do what Carol did, and we're just gonna mix them up, and we're gonna randomly grab, and we're gonna make a 9 patch. So we're gonna put 3 in a row, and we're gonna make 3 rows of 3. As long as you don't grab the exact same fabric, I wouldn't worry about the placement. This design is super forgiving, and it's gonna look nice no matter how you place them. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and sew those together. We're gonna sew each row, then we're gonna sew the rows together, and we're gonna make 4 of them. Now that you have all 3 of your 9 patches sewn, earlier I said 4, you only have 3. We're gonna add our 1.5 inch squares to the corner. For each 9 patch, you need 3 1.5 inch squares. We're gonna turn them wrong side up, and we're gonna draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other on all 3. Next, we're gonna lay the squares down in the corners. You wanna make sure that the diagonal is on the outside of the corner. And you're gonna stitch directly on the lines. We're gonna do that for all 3 9 patches. After we have sewn our diagonal lines, we're going to trim to the outside 1/4 inch past the line that we sewed on all 3 corners. Oop, I just dropped the camera. Then we're gonna press these seams open. I find with any diagonal seams that they lay much flatter if we take the time to iron them open. So we're gonna open these up like that, and we're gonna do this for all 4 squares. Now that our leaves part of our clover is done, we're gonna make the stem. So you're gonna take the 1.5 by 10 inch piece and your 6.5 inch background square. We're going to cut our background square diagonally from one corner to the other. Then we're gonna find the center of all 3 pieces. We're gonna open up our green with right sides together. We're gonna match our centers, folds, and we're gonna sew 1/4 inch, and we're gonna open this seam. Now we're gonna do the same thing to the other side. We're gonna put right sides together. We're gonna match our centers, and we're gonna sew 1/4 inch on this side, and we're gonna open this seam. Here is our stem block. We have our seams nice and open. Our last step to this block is to trim it up. We're gonna take our ruler, and we're gonna line, this block is gonna be bigger than what you need. We're gonna trim it down. So you're gonna make sure 6.5 is covered, and there's a little extra on each side, and this diagonal line on your ruler, you want to go right down the middle of the green. So you're gonna trim one side, and then the other. Then we're gonna flip it over, and we're gonna line up 6.5 on this side, 6.5 on that side. This line should still be going down the middle, and then we'll trim up the other side. And there's our block. Okay, so now is the best part. We get to put it together. We're gonna start with our 3 9 patches. And again, if I said 4 anywhere in the video, I meant 3. Okay. We're gonna have our sashing, which we cut at 1.5 by 6.5. We have 1 green 1.5 inch square, and then we have our stem. Okay. We're gonna start with 1 9 patch. We're gonna put 1 sashing, and then 1 9 patch. You want to put the corner that we did not add a white square to facing each other in the middle. and we're gonna sew these 3 together. Now, I prefer to open the seams on this part. Now we're on to row 2. This one is sewn together. We're gonna take 1 sashing, our 1.5 inch green square, and 1 sashing, and we're gonna sew these together. And again, I opened these seams. And row 2 is done. Our last row, we're gonna take our last 9 patch, and you wanna make sure this square that we did not put the background on is facing the inside. 1 sashing, and then our stem, and you wanna make sure the stem is pointing towards this green square. We're gonna sew these 3 together, and again, I opened these seams. Now that all 3 rows are sewn, we're gonna sew them together. All right, and here it is, all sewn together. Now, you could leave it just like this and quilt it, and you can make it into a pillow form. You could make it into a table topper. You can make it into a wall hanging. The quilter inside of me says we want to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to put in a 2-inch border of white around the outside. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2 pieces that are 13.5 by 2 inches. I'm going to put them on the opposite sides. I'm going to put them right sides together, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch, and again I'm going to open those seams. Now we're going to take our last 2 pieces, which are 2 by 16.5. We're going to put those on the remainder 2 sides. We're going to flip them up right sides together, and we're going to sew those. And there you have it. The top is all done. You could pillowcase it like we did the last couple weeks with our table runners, or you could layer the batting and backing and bind it. That's what I did with the original sample, but there's lots of things you can do with it. Alrighty, we'll see you next week.